One issue I'm guessing will come up a time or two tonight are Donald Trump's taxes, which of course we've heard a lot about over the past few days. So here's the quick, or at least quick-ish, recaps. The New York Times managed to get a slew of Trump's tax data. And the main takeaway is that he's paid way less than the average person in federal taxes over the last bunch of years. Trump paid just $750 a year in 2016 and 2017. And in 10 of the last 15 years, he paid nothing at all, at least partially because of so-called expenses he wrote off, like $70,000 in hairstyling fees he paid when he was on The Apprentice, fuel and meals from his personal aircraft, millions in property taxes on properties he's essentially used as homes, but which he classifies as investments, not to mention so-called consulting fees for a range of people, including hundreds of thousands paid to his daughter, Ivanka. The fact that several of his hotels and golf courses have been apparently hemorrhaging money helped lessen his tax burden too, although that doesn't do much to bolster that successful businessman image Trump relies on so heavily. And then there's the fact that he has loans and debts totaling a mere $421 million, much of which will come due within the next 4 years. But the president's response to all this?
It's fake news. It's totally fake news. Made up, fake. I paid tax. And you'll see that as soon as my tax returns. It's under audit. They've been under audit for a long time. The IRS does not treat me well.
I don't know. It seems like he's been doing pretty well with the IRS to me. And for the record, again, there's no law that says you can't show your tax returns when you're under audit. But now, thanks to the Times, we know the focus of that audit is a nearly $73 million tax refund Trump claimed, which he's been fighting with the IRS over the past decade. So how can you, too, get away with paying just $750 or less in taxes a year? Here with the answer, at least I'm hoping he is Axios business editor, Dan Primack. How are you, Dan?
Good. By the way, Jim, the answer is have a giant real estate empire. It's pretty simple, right? Go do that.
Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. So what should Trump and his family be worried about? I don't mean politically. I mean legally. I mean potentially criminally, if anything.
A couple things. One, I think his kids should be a little concerned, particularly Don and Eric, because they're the ones who run the Trump organization, right? And it looks like the Trump organization, even though we don't know cash flow information or what the asset value is, has some real problems and has some real liabilities coming up. That $400 million in change in debt, even if that doesn't technically end up coming due during what would be Trump's second term, if he's able to refinance it, well, that probably means it's going to have even more onerous terms. It will come due at some point.
Well, how about the potential criminal issue? One, Ivanka Trump, and even though this is not 100% locked up, but the belief, horrible choice of words, but the belief is that she received $700,000 in consulting fees at the same time that she was an employee of the Trump organization. Is that more than just inappropriate?
There seems to be disagreement when I talk to people about that. You know, there's one argument that says absolutely that this is kind of double dipping. There's some who say this is a privately held family business. They're kind of allowed to do what they want. There's no question that Trump was, the term tax lawyers would use, very, very aggressive in his accounting. In part, it might depend who's running the IRS and who's in charge of the person running the IRS. Right now, that's Donald Trump.
But okay, how about this write-off of this, quote, investment property in Westchester, which at least one of the Trump sons says that's where we lived. That was essentially where we lived through years and years and years. Is that crossing the criminality line potentially?
It could, although I think what's probably worth noting is to date, these charges haven't been filed, and they could have been, right? Because this isn't something that Trump just did in 2017 or 2018. A lot of this stuff predates him becoming president or even running for office. But look, I do believe the Times story is going to put new pressure on people at the IRS to take a harder look at this. You know, this question of is it criminal, is it not criminal? Unfortunately, this stuff isn't quite so clear, like you didn't pay your income taxes or I didn't pay my income taxes. It becomes in the eye of the beholder and lawyers fight it out. The audit Trump talks about, this thing's been being fought for years, and it'll probably continue to be fought for years.
Well, Leona Helmsley, if I remember correctly, wasn't she sentenced to like 16 years in jail? She ultimately did not end up sentencing it for doing what he's allegedly doing, is listing personal expenses like $70,000 for his hair and things like that as business expenses. So one gets charged and convicted and sentenced. Why has Donald Trump escaped so far?
Unclear. I mean, the $70,000 for his hair and leave aside the $70,000 in an annual fee for your hair. That's specifically tied to his Apprentice TV spots. And so that's the argument for why it's a business expense. As I said, I think there is a very good case the IRS could make here that he cheated on his taxes. There is also probably, unfortunately, also a very good case his lawyers could make for why they didn't. And again, go back to that refund. They've been fighting over this thing for years. And if you look at some of the big corporate tax fights, Starbucks, Amazon, et cetera, these things get protracted and ultimately usually do get settled out because the law isn't incredibly clear on these things.
So let's talk about the worries America might have. National security experts all over the place are quoted in the paper last night and this morning saying a debt-laden president is a compromised president, either in terms of who owns the debt or how he figures to pay it off. Do you buy that analysis?
I do. Yeah, I do. Look, we know who holds most of the debt. Most of it seems to be held by Deutsche Bank, but not all of it, but most of it. But even if it's just Deutsche Bank, and even if he's, say, able to refinance it, right, roll it over until he's no longer president, 5 years, 6 years down the line, what might he have to give in exchange for that? You know, normally if this was you or me who had a debt and we refinanced with the bank, we'd have to pay a little bit of money. The bank doesn't care about us. But this is the president of the United States. The bank might care about him. Other lenders might care about him and might try to get something in addition to just another, point on an interest rate.
And another lender might not be a bank. Another lender might be a country or a business propped up by a country with which he has been friendly. So could a president...
Jim, can I add to that also? A lot of debt, just because you take out a loan from a bank or from another lender, sometimes these large loans, they sometimes get sold and packaged to somebody else. So just because it's his lender today, just like if you have a mortgage and your mortgage sometimes gets sold, same idea.
So quickly, if we can, I assume this has not occurred before, but if he's reelected, could a president be foreclosed upon? He could be, right?
Technically, there's nothing legally to stop that. Absolutely.
But technically, under that Office of Legal Counsel memo, if he's reelected, he couldn't be criminally prosecuted for tax fraud or something like that, right?
Apparently, under that reading of it, yes. The bigger question would be, would a lender, particularly a large one like a bank, would they kind of have the stomach to try to foreclose on a sitting president?
So before you go, where did all this trove of debt, where did this come from?
That's a good question. When you read through the Times story, and it's massive, they never explicitly say they have his returns, right? Those pieces of paper that you sign. They never say that. They have data and information. So there's all sorts of speculation. Are these files that his accountant had? Is this communications between Trump's lawyers and the IRS? Remember, big refund. They've been dealing with this forever. It might be something like that. Documents that contain his tax information, but aren't his actual returns.
Regardless, it's a full employment opportunity for people like you. So congratulations, Dan. It's great to see you. Thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.